This person is really concerned about how to light a studio and how to prevent glare on the canvas. And she says, I've heard the best room for a studio is a north-facing room, or she says, or something like that. Well, we all can achieve this luxury in our homes. What we have is what we have. I've noticed a lot of glare on my substrate interfering with my painting. I have my easel straight up, and I move my studio in different positions. Can you please do a video on studio lighting? This would solve so many problems: value, hue, color, and temperature, and so forth. All right, we'll take care of those issues. Well, first let's address that glare on that canvas, because if you have glare on your canvas, it's going to drive you crazy when you're doing oil painting and acrylic painting too. All right, so when you're working on an easel and you're doing drawing, then a natural position for the easel is at an angle where the top is leaned back. And you usually don't have any problems there. But when you're working with oils or acrylics, you're working with a shiny material, and so there will be glare if you work either with an easel tilted back like this, or even tilted straight up, such as that person described. So you can resolve that problem if you just tilt your easel so that it is tilted slightly forward like this. Lock your easel in that position, and most easels are built so that you can lock your canvas from the top and from the bottom, and you don't have to worry about the canvas falling out. So that will correct that glare problem. It doesn't have to be tilted much, just a little bit. You can experiment with how much it should be tilted. But whether you're working with a studio easel or whether you're working with a portable easel such as this, that needs to happen in order to prevent that glare. So that's one problem taken care of. And let's move this easel out of the way. Now to the lighting itself. When I think about all the different sorts of studios that are out there, I'm thinking that there are all kinds of situations. Some of you have very tiny spaces to work in. Some of you have large spaces. You've got different colors of walls, all sorts of things. So maybe the best thing I can do is to give you some general advice or general standards or recommendations, and you can follow those recommendations and put together a good lighting situation for your painting. Now, first of all, regardless of where you are, your painting on your lighting, good lighting, only needs to be around the painting, and we all know how light works. It's going to gather into wherever the light is pointed, but it's going to kind of peter out in all directions. So it's not necessary to light the whole room. You can just light the area in which you're painting. So there are 5 things I've come up with here to help you to get really good lighting. Let me say before I start this, regardless of what kind of lighting you have no control over the lighting that your painting is going to be hung in should it be purchased by somebody. So it's not a bad idea, regardless of what kind of lighting you've got in your studio, it's not a bad idea to, from time to time, take your work off your easel and go into different lighting situations and view the work to be sure the colors are the way you want them to appear in different kinds of lighting. Under a cool fluorescent light, outdoors, because someone could be hanging a piece so that the outdoor light is coming through a window, or under a warmer light. So exposing your painting to a cool light, warm light, and daylight is a good way to check to be sure the color harmony is going to hold up no matter what kind of lighting it hangs in. That can be a problem sometimes because we really don't have any control over that. All right, now to what do you do about creating a good lighting situation for your studio. One thing is the temperature of the light, and that is very, very important. Today we have multiple kinds of lighting, bulbs and so on. In the old days we had the fluorescent and the incandescent, and we would get a good balance between fluorescent and incandescent, and that's really all we had to be concerned about. But these days we don't have incandescence anymore. But we do have on the boxes, usually on bulbs, on the boxes that bulbs come in, we do have this information that tells us, it tells us the wattage, it tells us the temperature of the light, and it tells us the lumens. That means how much light it produces in a certain amount of area. So, first of all, the temperature. Find lighting somehow, whether you're mixing warm or cool. Try to stay in the range of 5,000 to 5,500 Kelvin. Now, that's because at that mixture you've got white light, not too cool, not too warm. And that is the light that you get more or less from high noon if you're outside. So keeping that temperature as neutral as possible between warm and cool is going to give you an ideal lighting situation. And the way you get that is simply pay attention to the temperature of the bulbs you get, or I guess you'd say bulbs, lamps, or whatever. So that's the first thing. The next thing is the lighting should be diffused. Spotlights are the wrong way to go with lighting. You don't want direct light coming down and hitting your canvas because it's going to give you hot spots. It won't be even. So finding ways to diffuse that light. Now you can diffuse a spotlight just with a white handkerchief. So you don't need to invest a lot of money on diffusion, or simply buy one of the kind of lighting that has a diffuser built onto it. There are all kinds of ways to go. So just take the concept of the light needs to be diffused, and then you decide how you're going to diffuse the light. The light needs to be evenly distributed throughout the area in which you're painting, throughout your canvas. All right, now how is that going to happen? You don't want to bring the light too close to the canvas, and you don't want it to be too far away. And it works best either coming from the ceiling or coming from both sides of you, not just one side, but both sides. If you're working with lighting from lamps, that's diffused, of course. You can move those so that they're on both sides of you and kind of angled more from the back of you towards your canvas area, angled at about a 45-degree angle towards the area in which you're working. So having it evenly spread, be sure when you're setting your lighting, pay attention that the entire area is even. There's the even amount of light at the top and at the bottom and both sides. If you're working with small canvases, that's relatively easy to accomplish, but if you're working with very large canvases, it's a little bit trickier. So having the lighting, if you don't have it in the ceiling, having the lighting so that you can adjust the space between the light and the canvas is not a bad idea. What else? The light, a lot of people think you've got to have barrels of light flooding into the studio. Too much light can distort your work. If you have too much light, you're going to have a tendency to paint too dark. Just when you're outside in plain air, if you're under bright sunlight, your tendency is to paint you're painting too dark, because you got all that light making you think that your colors are lighter than they really are. And that's the reason a lot of plain air paintings will paint under an umbrella or some sort of shield in order to cut that lighting, cut the amount of light down. So you want enough light so that you can see well, but you don't want barrels of light. Now, light is usually measured in lumens, and it's really hard to gauge or tell you about how many lumens you need. But as a rule of thumb, you can figure that out looking at the labels on the light bulbs. They'll tell you how many lumens you have here, and you can figure per square feet that you're lighting. It's not easy enough, 3 times 3 times 3, or 4 times, or whatever. The kind of area, square footage, and then how many lumens per square feet? About 100-ish lumens per square feet. It's not too bright, but bright enough. And so you mix that with your temperature light when you're buying the bulbs themselves. All that information is on the better bulbs, so it shouldn't be hard to do. And it's important not to have that light too close to the painting. Now, I know that there are those lights, they're called, I forgot, full spectrum lights, lighting fixtures that will have the fluorescent ring and an incandescent. and it's made in a lamp form, and a lot of times people will put it above their paintings, maybe clamp it onto the easel. But if you get that too close to the painting, again, you're going to have hot spots. I think I said that earlier, but it's important to keep that lighting far enough away from the painting so that you don't have hot spots on the painting. All that will affect how you see the values of the colors on your painting. So if you take these five general principles and put them together with your imagination, you can come up with a lighting system without spending a whole lot of money. It's not necessary to have big fancy lighting equipment like you see in a lot of the artist studios, especially those that advise you on lighting. That's not necessary. It's only necessary that you take the five basic principles of lighting your studio and use your imagination to put those together so that you can create for yourself a nice lighting setting no matter what your limitations are. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.